Welcome to the Phil Steele Plus Tour with selections. Up for you today. I've got some free plays for you. Want to do a little housekeeping, but a quick note over last week. Last week we jumped out to that nice 2-0 start, and unfortunately, USC, despite a large, and I mean large, yardage advantage, first down advantage, came up short thanks to a fumble return touchdown, and the NFL play Las Vegas lost. So a 2-2 record. Brings the record to 27-13, 68% over the last 4 weeks here, including the quick hitters. Got some plays for you today, but once again, just to let you know what's going on here with us at the magazine. We're already 2 full weeks, basically, into writing next year's magazine. It's a 6.5-month project getting this thing out. Give an example. I'm doing the first write-throughs on some teams whose seasons are complete, and right now working on Arizona. And what we do to write a team is I go through and read every article that was written about that team for the entire season. Gives you a real good flavor of what units were hit hard by injuries, which ones weren't, which units had quarterback issues, etc. 505 pages on Arizona. Actually, 508 pages on Arizona. Only have about 54 to go, and then I'll be able to write the first write-through. We do the first write-through process now. We do the second write-through process in the spring. After we get the spring rosters, there's a lot of transfers coming in, and get that taken care of. And then the third write-through process is after I talk to the head coaches. And this past year, talked to over 100 of the 130 head coaches, spending basically about an hour with each coach, going over every player on the team, just to make sure we've got everything in line and ready for the upcoming year. And what a difference, I got to tell you guys. This year's magazine is from last year's magazine. Last year at this time, we're still playing the regular season. They didn't have the conference title games till December 20th. And then I had to try to figure out, there were some teams that played 4 games last year. Heck, there were some games that played 0 games last year. And there were teams that played 12 games last year. How do you bunch in that entire season? Plus, at this time last year, all the way up until March, we didn't even know if players were going to be returning or not. They were all granted an extra year. We contacted the schools and said, okay, which players are coming back, which ones aren't? And they're like, we don't know. We'll find out. And so we had to wait until March to really get the returning starters lost. I'll have returning starters lost up for you on philsteele.com. Middle of January, once the seniors have all announced who's leaving for the NFL draft. But now we know the seniors that are leaving. All the teams have played 12 games, so we're comparing apples to apples as opposed to apples to oranges to walnuts or whatever the heck was out there with 0 games last year. So I am super pumped about the magazine. I'm already on team number 8 of my first write-throughs for the season, and hard at work on next year's magazine already. But the job won't be done until the middle of June, so 6.5 months that we've got to go for that. Also, I thought I'd let you know, up on Phil Steele right now, Todd wanted me to point this out to you. If you go right here under FBS Info and click on Bowl Matchups, all the bowl matchups are up there. If you click on Middle Tennessee, it takes you right to their team page. So if you're doing any homework on the bowls, maybe getting a bowl confidence contest there, and if you click on the game itself, you'll see the last 24 years matchups. Now, that's a matchup where they haven't played. Let's go see if we can find one where the teams have probably played. We'll go to these, let's see here. Let's see Texas Tech and Mississippi State, see if these two teams have played recently. If you click on it there, nope, haven't met in 24 years. But if the teams have met in 24 years, they're up there. Maybe Todd will give me one that I can point out to you before I'm done here, and I'll be able to click on that and show you. How about North Carolina, South Carolina? There you go. We got one right there because they actually played here. Interesting, Sam Howell's first game, I believe, was against South Carolina at this site. Now his last game is going to be here at this site. But there you go. The last 4 matchups between North Carolina and South Carolina. All that's at your fingertips. Just go to philsteele.com, go to the homepage, and go to the bowl matchups here under FBS Info. That is all up and available for you right now. Makes it very easy for you to get through your pre-work that you're doing on the bowls for the season. But with all that said, let's get to some selections here. And we're going to start out with one of my favorites. Yeah, it's up here every year. Every year I've been doing the Phil Steele Plus forecast. We're going to take a look at the Army-Navy game. And, of course, the usual play which is on the under 35, and we'll get to the reasons for that. Now, first of all, if you've been listening to the Phil Steele Plus tour or reading the Inside the Press Box, you know whenever an option team plays an option team, a couple things happen. First of all, the defenses are well familiar with how to defend the option. The advantage of the option is that when they take on an opponent that doesn't normally play an option team, that team takes 2 to 3 to 4 series just trying to get up to the speed of facing the option. It's an unusual offense, and that's the advantage option teams have. However, when you play another option team, the defenses are very familiar with how to defend the option, and the offenses know that perfect defenses to defend the option, and you generally have a low-scoring game. This year, Navy played Air Force 23 to 3. I used that here on Phil Steele Plus. Army played Air Force 21 to 15. I used that here on Phil Steele Plus. Both games easily went under the total. Also, when you've got two running games going like that, the clock just continuously runs. You go back to last year's game between these two teams, Army and Navy. Army ran a grand total of 53 plays, and Navy ran 35. So that's 88 plays for the entire game in this era of fast-paced offenses where teams are putting up well over 100 plays a game, 120 plays per game, trying to get it going. It's a completely different type of game. So you have all that factored in, and then you look at the defenses here. Army's played a softer schedule for starters, but their defense is holding opponents to 61 yards per game below their season average. If you use Phil Steele Plus, which you should, if you're a Phil Steele Plus member, you get all this information at your fingertips, but this tells you where, let's use Liberty, for example. They held them to 48 yards below their season average. They gave up 384 yards. So that means Liberty, in their other 11 games this year, averages 432 yards per game. But Army only allowed them 384. Now, in that average, it's not including the Army-Liberty game. So it's all games other than Army. Liberty averages 432 yards per game, but against Army just 384, so they held them to 48 below their season average. It was the fifth best any defense did against them. They held Miami to a season low here, 211 yards on the season, holding opponents to 61 yards per game below their season average. And while Navy's 3-9, look at this defense. Their defense is holding opponents to 65 yards per game below their season average. Of all the teams that played Cincinnati this year, they were the number one defense. They held Cincinnati to 271 yards, which is 175 yards below their season average, and that was number one, the best any team did. They also held Air Force to a season low, which is not a shocker because that was option versus option, and holding Air Force to a season low is not a shocker. As you know, I like the under in this game. And then the clincher, we've also, by the way, Navy 87 yards below opponent averages on offense, so not a potent offense. And Army, despite the soft schedule, only 5 yards above season average, not a potent offense. So you have two good defenses. You've got option versus option. And now let's throw in the clincher. It's the one I use every year. And you know, if you click on the team name for the opponent you're playing, it pops up the last 24 years. Now this year, Todd added the over-unders over here, which is really a nice thing. This tells you over here who won the game straight up. As you see, Navy actually had a 14-game win streak in the series. Army's won 4 of the last 5 straight up. Look at the game against the spread. Army's doing well against the spread, but it's basically the dog that's doing well against the spread. And last year, remember, Army was actually at home for this game. It's highly unusual. See these marks there? That means neutral site. This means it was actually a home game for Army. And last year, we, of course, used the under. It was 15-0. But look at this under total here. 15 straight unders in the series. Now, first of all, you guys know how I feel about streaks. When you play on a streak, you can win many times. You lose only once. I gave you the one example, back 6-7 weeks ago about playing roulette. Just keep riding the same number. You win many times. You only lose once. When you try to guess when a streak's going to end, you can actually lose many times, and you win only once. So we got the streaks going for us, 15 in a row. We got two defenses. We got option versus option. Of course, it's going to be here on the Phil Steele Plus Tour. We're going to go with the lowest total of the year, which is 35, and we're going to go under the total in the Army-Navy game. All right, let's move along to the FCS now. And the playoffs are there. We're in the quarterfinals. There's 4 games to go. And I did find an interesting one to look at this week. We're going to put South Dakota State here on the left. They made it to the championship game last year. They were the number 1 seed last season. And we are going to put Villanova on the right. And the first thing I want to look at is last year, being the number 1 seed, South Dakota State was home against Holy Cross and won, home against Southern Illinois and won by 5, and home against Delaware and won by 30. When they finally did leave, they went to Sam Houston, and they lost that game by 2 points in the championship game. This year, they are not the number 1 seed, and last week they went on the road to Sacramento State. My computer numbers only had them winning that game by less than the 7.5. As it was, they only won the game 24-19. They were outgained 480 to 363 on the road. So this is not last year when they were the number 1 seed and had the home edge for the playoffs. This is this year. And they just played a road playoff game, and it was a tight one. I believe at the end of the game they got a nice 4th down conversion to keep the final drive alive so they didn't have to punt. They did it where the quarterback runs to the sideline and acts like he's arguing with the coach, and they snapped it to the running back who ran for the first down. That's how they survived Sacramento State last week. Now they got to pack up from traveling to the West Coast, fly back home to South Dakota, and fly all the way across the country to Villanova. Now, Villanova was not impressive last week, but they were just playing Holy Cross. They were a big favorite. This was probably their C game. I don't think Villanova was putting a lot of effort into it necessarily. They did win 21-16, but now they're back at home, and they are a very good home team, as you know. And here's a couple more factors about this one. My computer actually has South Dakota State by 1. They're a full touchdown road favorite here. Still sort of scratching my head a little bit. Why? In fact, the yardage says Villanova has the yardage edge, 405 to 360. Now let's look at the average game grades. Villanova's 84.5 and South Dakota State 83.8. So that says only 4 for the season. But look at the last 4 weeks. By the way, that's 4-point win outright for Villanova for the season. So that they're getting 7 at home. I was thinking for a minute they were a favorite. No, they're the dog. They're a 7-point dog. So they're better. They're number 7 against number 11, and they're at home, and they're getting 7 points. And if you look at the last 4 weeks, they're 87.5. South Dakota State is 81.7. So right there, the last 4 weeks' averages says Villanova by 8.8. They're a 7-point dog. Also, they had a running back for Villanova here. If you look, their top rusher, Covington, he missed these 3 games. One of those 3 games he missed was William and Mary, one of their losses. Their other loss was Penn State. You expect them to lose to Penn State. So the William and Mary game, they only rushed for 39 yards, but they didn't have their top running back. He's back. Oops, let me click back on that for Villanova. So he's back, which puts them in pretty good shape for this game. They've got their full running back core available. Last week they didn't run him as much as you'd want, but he had 142 yards against Stony Brook in the season final. Once again, I think last week they were just playing their C game. This week they'll play their A game. They're at home for this one. My power ratings basically say they're probably the better team. And if you look at South Dakota State, I mean, they lost at South Dakota by 3. They lost to Northern Iowa by 9. They lost to Southern Illinois by 1. So they've had the games where they haven't won this year. They only beat North Dakota by 3. They only beat Sacramento State by 5. And here they have to win on the road. But not only win on the road, they have to win on the road by more than a touchdown. And if you look at the last 4 weeks, Villanova's defense giving up just 240 yards per game. South Dakota State, 408 yards per game. So I like Villanova plus 7 at home over South Dakota State. I feel they should be the favorite. Another thing I'm going to throw at you real quick, and it's something you may not know. In fact, I didn't even know this till my FCS guy pointed it out, and it's with Montana State. Montana State had a quarterback in Matthew McKay, who was an NC State transfer, hitting 62%, 16-3 ratio, having a really good year. That makes him dangerous, right? Pretty good offense. Here's the thing. He actually opted out right here after Montana. Prior to the first playoff game, he opted out. So last week, in high winds, Tommy Mellott got his first start. It was at home against UT Martin. They were a big favorite. He only hit 8 of 20 for 51 yards. Now he's got to make his first road start this week for Montana State. And Montana State is only a 7-point dog against the Sam Houston team that's actually defending champs in FCS. Now, they had a rough go last week against a very dangerous Eastern Washington, but or I mean, a very dangerous incarnate word, I should say. But now, with that close call last week, they had to stop a goal line stand at the end of the game to win by 7. They'll probably be better prepared for Montana State. Something to look at, and something very interesting. How unusual is that for a quarterback to opt out before he hit the portal? Now, guys, normally I give you an NFL thing. I'm disappointed the NFL play lost last week. I don't like losing. I don't like losses. And when I looked at the NFL card this week, nothing really jumped out. So I'm not going to force an NFL play just to have an NFL play. As you know, Phil Steele Plus does indeed have all this NFL info for you. Click on any team page. Look at the red-hot New England Patriots, for example. You can see all this green. They're nothing but green, playing really good football as of late. That's on every team. You can click and see how they did against Indianapolis in the past. They're on a bye week this week. So all that's available for the NFL, but I want to get you this week. We only have 2 plays for you, but hopefully they're both going to be good. We've used a tried and true one, and then one where I think the wrong team's favored in the game. I'm going with the home team. I'll be back with you next week. And by the way, talking about the first bowl issue for Inside the Press Box, it'll be coming out Thursday, December the 16th. It'll have the first 10 bowl games in there for you from the 17th to the 20th. And then at that time, I'll update you with the rest of the schedule. But with the opt-outs, I don't want to put all the bowl games up there because the write-up would drastically change. So I want to keep the stuff up to date. I want to release it 2 to 3 days before each bowl game goes so that you've got the most up-to-date information and hopefully the most winners during your bowl season. I'd like to take this time to thank you for watching the Phil Steele Plus Tour all season long like you have. Let's hope we have another productive winning week this week, and I'll be back with you next Thursday or Friday with your next Phil Steele Plus Tour with selections.